Aloha and welcome. We're now moving from chapter one into chapter two. We're going to be discussing identity and access management. So, the first thing that comes up in identity and access management is principles. So, we're going to go ahead and open up our text here. And we're looking now at our principles section. So we're going to start out with identity and access management, also known as IAM. There's something similar. It's called identity management. It's the same thing, really. They're just synonyms for each other. IAM or IDM with the lowercase d. It's a framework of technologies and policies that manage user identities in a system and controlling user access to system resources. The three main objectives of IAM is the identification, authentication, and authorization of users. Identification, authentication, and authorization. And when we say users, we don't necessarily mean people like you and I. A user could be something else like a process as well. Sometimes you want things to run in systems automatically, and we have service accounts and things like that. So we'll need to sometimes identify, authenticate, and authorize those service accounts and other things like that as well. So when we talk about users, primarily, we mean you and I, but we also mean these other processes and things that can't be running. So, but again, we're going to focus on in this section identification, authentication, and authorization. They may sound like similar concepts, but they're actually unique to they're different. So we'll go ahead and start our demo here. So an employee is issued an ID card as identification. So this is when they present their proof of who they are, their government issued ID or whatever, they get their identification, and then we go to the next step. So the card scanner authenticates the scanned ID card in the company system. So they're authenticated when they've actually verified their identification. And then after they're authenticated, then they're authorized or allowed to use something. So whether you're given your identification, you claim your identification, you authenticate, in other words, you prove who you are, and then you're allowed to through authorization. So those are the three different things, and we'll cover them each in turn. So with identification, a person well, first of all, it doesn't have to be a person. It could also be an application, a process, or a device, like the service accounts we mentioned. Identification is the act of a user claiming an identity. So a user can claim the identity through various ways. You can use a username, like we're used to using username and password to log in. You can have a certificate, which is a digital credential that binds the identity of a user to a cryptographic key. You can use a token. A token can be a physical device, kind of like these little, they've got Yubico keys and stuff like that that you can use to, plug into your USB device, and that'll provide you with a token. There are other ones where you can generate a token on it and read the number off or something like that. But you have SSH keys, cryptographic keys, key pair owned by a user. You can use smart cards, which are cards with an embedded microchip that is assigned to a user. Um, uh, so identity proofing, that's the process of verifying a user's identity during the account creation. So when you're just creating it, for example, like with online banking, they require you to have some kind of a government issued ID to prove who you are in the beginning when you're setting everything up. And then with the identity, you have different attributes within the system. And the attributes can be things like your name, your email address, your location, and your password. So the activity here, the participation activity, you're just going to be matching these things up to the appropriate concept here. And again, we're going to answer some true and false. This is really good because it's going to help you identify uh, identify. Okay, you're going to take the term identification that we just learned, and you're going to really probe into what exactly it means. And now that we've finished the identification, we're going to the second part, which is the authentication. The authentication is the actual proving of your identification. So authentication is the act of verifying or proving a user's claim to an identity. So a user may provide different types of evidence to prove the user's claim to an identity, such as the user's possession of a device, the user's location, the user's knowledge of a password or a PIN. So the different types of evidence that a user can provide to prove the user's claim, they're known as authentication factors. You may have heard of factors in the term multi-factor authentication, MFA. So we'll get into this at some point, but we have different factors, and there's there's different expressions for this in security, but it's like what you know, what you are, what you possess, things like this. So you can have biometrics, you can have like passwords. That's going to be what you know. What you are could be the biometrics, like your fingerprints, your retinal scans, things like that, or what you possess, and that can be some kind of a key, a physical key or something like that that you carry. So those are the different factors that we talk about. So those are authentication factors. So a user and the system exchange authentication information by using an authentication protocol. So we have these factors, and the way that we exchange this information is through an authentication protocol. So an authentication protocol is a type of computer communications protocol designed for securely transferring authentication information between two parties. So there's lots and lots of different authentication protocols out there. Some of these had earlier versions of it that were found to be insecure, and so there have been advancements. So these are later iterations of it. So some of the protocols that we have out there now that are in use. We have password authentication protocol, which is known as PAP. We have CHAP, which is challenge handshake authentication protocol. We have Kerberos. We have EAP. We have IEEE 802.1x. We have Radius, and we have TechAx Plus. So in our participation activity here, you'll be matching up authentication factors, protocol, and authentication. That's pretty easy. And then you're going to go and dive into the true and false here, figuring out the ins and outs of authentication itself. And then the last thing we talk about, so we've claimed our identity, we've got our identity, then we've actually authenticated and proven our identity. Now we're going through the authorization part, which is where we're given permissions or allowed to use things. So authorization is the act of granting a user access to a system resource. Authorization occurs after a user is identified and authenticated by the system. So remember that authentication occurs after you're identified and you're authenticated by the system. So controlling access to a system resource is involved a subject and an object. So your subject is the person or the process, the application, whatever it is that wants to use something. The something that's wanted to be used is the object. So the subject is an entity that wants to access a system resource. The subject is typically a person, but as we said before, it can be application, process, or device. An object is the system resource the subject wants to access. So how do we figure out which subject can which use objects? Well, that comes down to the access control module or the authorization model. So that is a set of technology independent rules for controlling access to an object by a subject. So the commonly used access control modules are discretionary access control, that's called DAC, DAC. There's mandatory access control, MAC, not to be confused with like MAC addresses and stuff from networking. And we also have attribute-based access control, which is ABAC. We also have role-based access control, and we have rule-based access control. So we'll get into some of these later on in subsequent chapters, so don't worry about that. But just remember, when we're talking about authorization, we're authorizing a subject to use an object. So a subject using an object, and we do that through an access control model or an authorization model, since this is all under the umbrella of authorization. And the different types of control models that are out there, examples of it are DAC, MAC, ABAC, role-based access model, and rule-based access model. So I don't know why we don't have RBAC, and well, I guess role-based and rule-based would both be RBAC, so they didn't make that nice little acronym for us. But anyway, look down here again. We have a mix, the matchups, and we have more true and false to really probe into. Do you understand the full meaning of authorization here? So go ahead and wrap that up. Go through your participation activities. knock them all out, and that will conclude the introduction to principles here. So I'll see you in the next video. As always, if you have any questions, you know what to do. Send me an email at jsj3@hawaii.edu. I will see you in the next video. Aloha.